uplifting the hoes. Because if anything, putting the hoes down, okay? And we just gotta uplift each other, regardless of your occupation, okay? Uplift each other, hoes included. Hi, hello, and welcome to the Cozy Little Book Club. I'm your host, Taylor. Thanks so much for joining. So February is over, and I'm just a wee bit late, but I am so excited to talk to y'all about this book that I've read, and I've been ruminating over it for the last few weeks, so I am really ready to talk to y'all about it. So obviously now it's March and I've been really busy, but don't worry. I do have a lot of authors and books that I've been reading from women to honor Women's History Month. So don't you fret. Those are coming right after, but I just had to get this one off. So this is the third book from my mini-series, Controversial or Cool, and it is sure to keep you deeply invested. And if you're not invested, then your FBI or CIA agent who is listening in will definitely perk their ears up. So if that doesn't give you a little hint of what's to come, then you need to get your ears open, okay? You need to get your ears open, your thinking cap on, and let's get into the book. The book we're talking about today is, drumroll please, The Spook Who Sat by the Door by Sam Greenlee. Now, the name itself might be a little controversial in our day and age, but when the book was originally published in 1969, this language was very common and typical for that time. And I do have the book here. This is the book. Shout out to the library again. But anyway, this is the book, The Spook Who Sat by the Door, Sam Greenlee. Shout out to him. This dude... He looking like, who's that creeping in my window? Who's that looking in my window? Yeah, shout out to Remy Ma. No, that's the song I'm referencing. But yeah. Anyway, it's really good. I'm obsessed with this book. I'm going to buy it. So yes, even though we're utilizing the library to read the books and find out if we want to buy them, I'm definitely buying this book. So I think this book is very necessary. So I'm really excited to get into this book, but I do want to go over a few trigger warnings. The trigger warnings include mostly overtly racist epithets, gang violence, drug use, murder by cop, and just plain old murder. Yeah. And with that, let's get into it. The story is told from the perspective of Dan Freeman, who has become the first Black person to become a part of the United States elite as a CIA officer. This is a big deal, and it's a big deal, but it's mostly a way to just kind of appease civil rights leaders and to also really just get a senator elected. Yeah. Race and politics always go hand in hand. So yes, it was mostly a way to appease civil rights activists and as a way to kind of make it seem as if America is moving forward in its diversity and inclusion efforts, which is a big LOL in this day and age. And although Dan is highly intelligent, extremely resourceful, and could absolutely be a huge asset to the CIA, they stick him in very non-essential and menial tasks. He's really just there to just be the token Black person at the office, to say, hey, we're doing good with integration, okay? We're doing it. And while that's incredibly unfortunate, Dan is okay with that because he ultimately has a bigger plan in store. We love a man with a plan, okay? Dan is the man with the plan, okay? While being in these top secret meetings and learning so much about Central Intelligence, Dan uses his tokenism and access to gain extensive knowledge in guerrilla warfare, espionage, and subversive tactics. Again, Dan is the man with the plan. And we love that for him. While working, he excels in his training and gains even more knowledge and learns how to master so many other tactics, such as sabotage, weapon handling, and psychological warfare, which is something that has come in handy for many governments around the world. His plan is slow but steady in motion. After many years of being basically a glorified desk clerk in DC, he returns back to his hometown in Chicago to really take his plan to the next level. There he works in social work, specifically handling gangs and the youth of the inner city. While he does do work with the kids, he also recruits and trains them to start a revolution. Using the training he gained while working with the CIA, he teaches them about urban warfare, intelligence gathering, and organizational strategy, all to help them fight against systemic racism. Now, if that's not a cause worth standing up for, sue me. The book goes on to set the scene before Freeman and his freedom fighters continue fighting for justice, all while no one suspects Freeman at all. It's really clever. He really does great at being a double agent and being a Tom to his fellow Black people while also being appeasing to the white people around him. It's the perfect balance, and it's honestly kind of what America wants from a lot of Black people, but we'll get to that a little bit later. The themes of this book all have really important aspects and are something to think about. The themes are tokenism and institutional racism, guerrilla warfare and revolution, the surveillance state, and the psychology of oppression. So that's a lot to take in, so let's just break it down. Not before, let's break it down. So this book made me feel, like I said, a lot of ways. It made me angry. It made me laugh. It made me hold my chest because some of the parts were just so touching and sentimental. But I can say that the most common baseline feeling I felt was one of frustration. I remember reading somewhere that this book was classified as a satire and also a serious attempt to look at the issues that revolve around civil rights. And while I did personally laugh at some parts that others may not, to me, this really highlighted an issue of America as a whole. Not the civil rights, it's just the issue of America, okay? America has a lot of issues. Shout out to Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar. America has a problem. It's been had a problem. This is nothing new to a lot of people, but especially colored people, okay? We know. So, or not even just colored people, marginalized groups in general. So yeah, this book really highlighted that. And I know that this is going to be a lengthy review, so I'm going to just try to stick to the most jarring aspects of it, okay? So let's get into it. I can also say that while reading this book, I felt a huge sense of pride in being a Black person, which is nothing new. It just felt this time a little bit more like cheeky, and I'll explain why in a bit. First things first, I have to say that Dan Freeman is probably my most favorite character from a book ever. I can't say that I have a lot of favorite characters from books. I've read a lot of great books and there's been a lot of great characters, but between him and Lauren from The Parable of the Sower, those are definitely my two faves. Shout out to these free-thinking, action-minded, initiative-taking people because I'm obsessed with them, okay? They just really set the bar very high, and you could just really learn a lot from both of them. And so it's time to stand Dan. And even though his name is Dan Freeman, let's just call him Freeman that I think that the author, Sam Greenlee, I think he really was intentional when he made that name Freeman. And honestly, I'm gonna veer off a little bit because some of my favorite TV characters are Huey and Riley Freeman from the Boondocks, and Aaron Magruder was very intentional with that too. So I think that we should just call Dan by his last name, Freeman, and yeah, let's just do it. I want to let you know that Freeman was more than dedicated to the cause. When we first meet him in the book, he's about 8 years in, right? He's done the military. He's helped with social work. He's learned how to climb to the top of his class of everything when it comes to education, athletics, combat. He's at the top of 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 the crop, okay? Yes, so he's already like head honcho. And he's so dedicated to the cause and so unwavering. It's just refreshing, and I just really love that. And I think that a lot of people now could really learn from this person. And one thing I really appreciate is he's really thinking about the end and the long game, right? So he slowly, outwitting his peers. And he is so seamless that he just knows how to blend in with anybody. And even if he doesn't want to blend in necessarily and like be buddy, he knows how to disappear into the crowd. So he's just really good at what he does. And it's, again, that's why it's really sad that the CIA really just did not utilize him, because he really could have helped, America. And he did help America, by the way. He just didn't help America for the agenda that the government of America wanted. But I'll get into that a little bit later. And I think I especially liked him because he just wasn't uppity, right? He actually really just hated middle-class Black America because he always felt like they were trying to appease to the white man. And for him, that was a problem because, it's cool to make a lot of money, but you're supposed to be giving back to the people and, lifting them up with you. Everybody can get there. You just have to open the door and hold it open. You shouldn't close the door and shut people out who look just like you. There's room for everybody. And the world that I live in and the universe that I live in is very abundant. So there's no need to be greedy, stingy, just nasty. You can help anybody. And I fully believe that. And so that's what Freeman wanted to do. He wanted to use his education, his wits, his smart, his thinking to really free his people. And so that's what he did. And he was in it for the long game, even when they were not, supporting him in the way that he probably should have felt and been supported, but he really helped them out. And the thing about Sadiddy people is that they think that just because they're up there, and if you're a little different, they might not think that you belong there. Do people call white people Sadiddy? I don't know. I feel like when I think about the word Sadiddy, I always think about Black people. Like, I don't know. I've never heard anybody talk about white people being Sadiddy or any other race, but that is interesting that I think about it. Language matters. Words matter. But yeah, so he was kind of annoyed with these super uppity middle-class Black Americans who just felt like because he was just, maybe not so gung-ho to like talk to them and be buddy and in their face, that they just thought that they were better than him. And he outshowed them and outdone them each time. And I loved it. And I was just like rooting for him super heavy because, again, there's room for everybody. We don't have to be crabs in a bucket. Crabs in a barrel? Crabs in a bucket. You don't got to be crabs. Why would you want to be a crab? People eat them up. Black people be eating them up. Actually, that's a really good analogy. Okay, it's actually really full circle. Freeman was on a mission. He really wanted to make it. He really did not want the word Black and poor to be synonymous, which was something very common in America. And it's common now. It's nothing new. But, everything goes back in cycles. It might look a little differently, but things are very cyclical when it comes to history, the world, life. It's just how it all happens. And we have to break those cycles if we're really dedicated to freedom. And that's what Freeman was doing. He was really dedicated to that. And at this point, Freeman had had enough, and he was going to do something about it. And we love a be about it man. Or be about it person. It doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, they, them. I don't care. Be about it, Like, don't just be fed up. Use that anger to propel you to make the change on some Gandhi stuff. Be the change you want to see. Was that Gandhi? I really don't know. I think it is Gandhi. So there are obviously very incredibly racist things happening in this book. Some that are based on facts and history, such as, pumping drugs into the streets and putting guns out and then calling the people who are the victims of these heinous crimes or heinous acts against a race, calling them junkies and then calling them criminals because they are in a trap of survival, a endless loop. So it's really interesting. It's just really interesting because you put that stuff in one neighborhood, in a Black neighborhood, and they're just crackheads and criminals. You put this in another neighborhood, a white neighborhood, and they're just misguided. They need rehab. They need help. They need rehabilitation. They have the resources. They don't. So it's just, yeah. I don't really know what else to say about that. It's just up. That's really all I got to say about it. Regardless of the so much racist stuff that happened in that book, happens today, happened back in the day. What I liked about this book is that these acts of rebellion and freedom and revolution from Freeman and his freedom fighters and these young gang thug members, They really put these people on a tailspin, and I loved it. Ate them up. You know what I'm saying? Like, these young black men, black boys really outsmarted the government at their own game. And no one gave them the credit that it was them. And that actually worked for them. But they just couldn't wrap their mind around that these black boys who are thugs and hoodlums and hooligans, that they could just really outsmart the CIA and really start a revolution. Can I get a was that Kirk Franklin? Can we get a revolution? Wait, how did that song go? Oh, do I hear a revolution? Whoop, whoop. Like, come on, Kirk Franklin. He knew what was up. He knew what was up. So pretty early on in the book, some of the CIA directors, one of their excuses for why they couldn't have any black people in the CIA was because black people were not smart enough. They were not sly enough, and they'd be super noticeable. So that's why they couldn't have any black spies, okay? And then boom! Here are these young black boys and men coming in, stuff up, and doing it damn well. And I love it. I live for it. Now, don't get me wrong. What they did was wrong, right? So they're robbing banks. They are robbing artilleries and armories. They are outsmarting the National Guard. But to be free comes at a price. It's not easy. That's why people don't get free, because they sit and lay down. It's not easy. You have to do things that are wrong. But it's okay if other people do it. So the right and wrong conversation is not gonna be a conversation had in this review today, because
it's cool when they do it. It's a problem when I do it. Fuck them.
Yeah. So there are two things that can be gleaned from this. Okay. Never underestimate what anyone can do when they are trying to get free. And freedom can come in a lot of different ways to many different kind of people. And two, absolutely never underestimate the genius of being black. And I say that very specifically because, again, black people have been through the ringer all the time, and constantly innovative, constantly being able to utilize that struggle, that pain, and alchemize it into something outstanding. Shout out to the Gap Band, because that's what just came in my head. So yeah, there's a lot to, just never underestimate the power of black people and black genius. And that is black excellence, baby. That is it. I also want to emphasize that the leaders of America, who are white, were so convinced that these black people could not do that they couldn't even fathom that black people could be smart and outthink them and outwit them, that they were just super, super convinced that all these random acts that were happening had to be because of Russians and communists. And, back in the day, America really had like a real big fight against the communists, the commies. They had like all these spies they would execute, and they were not playing. But it was just very interesting, the lengths they would do to overlook the smarts of black people. And since we're already here, I'm just going to give you a little bit of homework. Just do a quick Google search about COINTELPRO, which is a counterintelligence program. And you'll learn a lot about America's feat and plight against communism. The Red Scare. I think that's what the Red Scare was about, right? Yeah, the Red Scare. So look into that. Yeah, you ain't think that the Cozy Little Book Club was not only giving you book reviews, but also history lessons? You're welcome. You're welcome. There was a part that I wanted to read to you from the book, but I thought I saved the page number and I didn't. But essentially, it was a conversation between Freeman and one of his, lieutenants, one of the gang leaders turned lieutenants. Freeman was really trying to instill into this young man, the importance of what they're doing, all this prep and all this work that they're working on to, why it's so important, right? So the young man pretty much asked him, do you really think that we can win this war, revolution? And Freeman was like, it's really not about winning anything. We just got to get the white man to stop f***ing with us. And I think that that is a interesting sentiment because, you know, you're working with very little resources, right? Already as Black people. You're working with very little resources. And so you can't beat something that was not built for you, but you can definitely tell them to f*** off. so you got to show them. It's about that whole not lying, you know, rolling over and taking it. You got to beef up and let them know, like, we are not to be messed with. And yeah, so, and it's not going to be easy. You know, there's nothing easy about freedom. You know what I mean? Like, this book was written right after, how many years? Like 6 years after Martin Luther King died and was shot. Someone who was here for our freedom. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes a long time. And so he was like, you know, this is not about a winning or losing thing. It's just about people to stop messing with us and put respect on our name. And I think that that's something to learn from.
I also want to be clear that I'm not condoning violence against people. I'm just saying that people are fed up. So I understand where some people are coming from if they take matters into their own hands in their own way. I'm not condoning it, but I do understand.
I do love this relationship that Freeman has with these young boys because a lot of them don't have dads, you know? So he's not only teaching them how to be men and to take accountability for themselves and utilize these smarts that they had. He was basically not only teaching them about, you know, the military tactics and intelligence and things like that, he was also teaching them their history, the history that people are not taught. I know as someone who grew up in the South, there was a lot of Black history that I did not know about. A lot of Black history. And honestly, I really didn't know about it until I got older, but specifically when I went to school in Illinois. You know, Chicago, a lot of my classmates, my really good friends, my college friends, they're from Chicago. And I've learned a lot about Black history from them because something about Chicago and the way that I don't know what they have for the curriculum for Black History Month, but they just have a lot of righteous people, a lot of righteous Black people who are teaching the kids stuff. And that in turn trickled down to me. And I've done my own research and I'm grateful for that. And so it was just very beautiful. And again, full circle, because this is all set in Chicago at this point, that Freeman was not only teaching these guys how to, you know, fight the power, but also learn your history. Because a lot of times they're going to have you thinking that everything was about being a slave. It's not. Maybe starting in America to a large extent, yes, but there were Black people in America before slavery. You know what I'm saying? They might have got swept up in it, but, you know, we have a lot of rich, beautiful lineage, and a lot of people just don't know about it. So yeah, I do think that it was very beautiful. And one thing that I really liked about Freeman is that not only was he helping the youth, but he was also freeing the hoes. You know what I'm saying? Now again, this is 60s, 70s that this is happening in. You know, what did I tell y'all about that book? The first controversial cool book, Pimp by Iceberg Slim. That was in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. But, you know, pimping culture and whores and prostitutes have been around since the beginning of time. And so anyway, I'm going to just tell y'all what it is. Freeman utilized a prostitute. And, you know, he was telling her, you know, about her lineage and how she looked like so much like a Dahomey, I think that's how you pronounce it, Dahomey queen. You know, he's like, you look beautiful. You should not wear these wigs. You should wear your natural hair. You should wear red lipstick. You know, he wasn't like telling her what to do, but he was just suggesting these things. And not only just suggesting like on her looks, he educated her. He had the whore at the, he had that lady who was a whore at the library learning about her lineage, taking pride in who she was. The next time he saw her, she had her big afro, looking beautiful, voluptuous. You know, I don't want to talk about her being a whore still, but, you know, she's still the whore. But she had moved on up, okay? You know, she was a put-up hoe. She wasn't just out here. The pimp is running through me again, but she was put up. So she wasn't dealing with the BS, and she knew more about herself. So, you know, who you know as a righteous man is educating the hoes now? And not just educating them, but uplifting them, letting them know where they come from, how they take pride in themselves. I just really love Freeman. Like, that could be kind of a little, ooh, that was not cool, but whatever. Like, I thought that was fire. So, you might not agree with that, but who uplifting the hoes? Because if anything, putting the hoes down, okay? And we just gotta uplift each other, regardless of your occupation, okay? Uplift each other, hoes included. So another thing I wanted to bring up, and I kind of touched on it before, was the family structure between Freeman and these young boys. Again, he was a father figure to them, and it was a mutually beneficial agreement, right? But also, being that Freeman had to play this double agent role to appeal to white people in the outside world, but then these underbelly people, he can be his real self and like tell what he really is looking and working on. So it was a way for him to kind of, he's probably like this a lot. It was a way for him to relax a little bit because, he doesn't have to hide his true feelings with them. They know what's up. They know what he's been doing this for so long. A lot of other people don't. I was going to put this later, but let's talk about it now. His psychological and mental fortitude to live that double life was really tough. You're not really making a lot of authentic friends. You're not having a lot of love. That's why he was soliciting prostitutes. And he really wasn't out here just doing a bunch of prostitutes because he had to be real particular. It's not easy to be a revolutionary. You have to be very tight-lipped. And because remember I talked about the other thing about people infiltrating, you have to just know who you're with, and people can play two sides. I mean, he was, but for the greater good. And I want to actually, let me go before I move on, for the greater good, because nobody can really be free until Black people are free. And I think people talk about that, but they don't really y'all not really hearing that, because until Black people are free, no one else is going to be free. Just let y'all sit on that for a while, because it is the greater good. People be like, that's un-American. Oh my God, they're kidnapping people and trying to mess with the military. They're trying to start wars. Okay, there's always been a war on Black people. And because there's a war on Black people, there's a war on other people. Okay? That's why we're in this predicament now. So I'm going to leave that at that. But this concealment is a lot on the psyche. He was like, am I even really who I am anymore? And he can't have these thoughts with other people. He can't have a therapist. Black people wasn't really going to therapy in the 70s, but not really. But he can't talk to people about how he's really feeling, because who knows who's going to turn on you, And so it's just really difficult, but it was very beautiful that they had this love for each other, and they were able to really, uplift each other and trust each other. But he really brought out the best in these young men and boys, and that trickled down to the other people in their gangs and the other people that they were spreading this word to. There was a lot there, and I thought that was very beautiful. Though some people might think it's unconventional, but so be it. It's a lot of things that are unconventional that work. Okay, so and these young boys only became a gang because they were in these, again, underfunded, lack of resource schools where if they were gifted and bored, they're going to act out. And so they dropped out of school to be around other like-minded, smart young men who just weren't getting the attention that they deserved and needed to really rise. You know what I mean? There was an episode, Ernan Van's daughter, Lottie, was really smart. Their teacher was basically saying, you need to get Lottie up out of here because she is excelling way more than them. And they kind of did like another little analogy within that, these kids are the lambs, right? They're going to the slaughterhouse. The teacher opened the door so Lottie can leave to be free. And that's really intense to think about, especially when it comes to children. But that's what he was kind of helping them with, He's uplifting them, because otherwise they will just be in this nasty cycle. They could have really took their gang stuff to a whole nother level, killing hella people, doing all this really terrible stuff, because again, a lot of the hood is a trap. Keep you in there, keep that cycle going, keep that money going, keep that drug problem and them guns a problem, killing people who look like you. It's just something. And I think that there's something to think about, research on, whatever you need, but there's something to think about with that. And so I really just appreciated their, again, mutually beneficial relationship, because he really instilled something that a lot of people would not have seen in those boys. And that was very beautiful to me. So when people talk bad about gangs and cults, although sometimes they can go awry and lead to some very terrible things, I do think that it's important to remember that humans want to feel connected and they want to feel appreciated and wanted and loved. It's human, you know what I mean? And so if you band together people who look and think like you, it's not that surprising. There were also a lot of quotes about like the importance of laughter and blues music. And I won't get into all of them, but it is important. I think that quote, laughing to stop from crying is super real, because I think even now a lot of Black people make a lot of jokes and it might come off as, it was never serious. I think it's just a way to cope with things. And something that Freeman said was, if they take away laughter and joy from Black people, then we're all toast. We're done. Because that's something that Black people can always bounce back. Nobody should be surprised that Black people are this resilient because of all the things that are constantly thrown at us. But it's just interesting because you see so many people collectively making jokes about their struggles. I think not just Black people, but especially Black people. I'm not saying like this struggle is in everyone's blood, but I do think that joy and that laughter is, this might sound very ignorant, but I'm okay with that. It just might just be in our collective spirit, that joy and that perseverance. There's something about it, because no matter how many times people try to knock you down, we still here. It just goes to show that you just have to continue to have that joy and that laughter to get through life, and that doesn't matter what color you are or what race you are or what you think you are. It doesn't matter. Life is life. I'm not going to say life is hard, because life is also very beautiful, but there are ups and downs, peaks and valleys, and you need that joy and that laughter to keep you going. And yeah, that's just important. And I hope that whoever's watching this never forgets that. So this is the last quote I'm going to say, because again, like I said, there are so many quotable moments. One of the lieutenants was talking to Freeman. They were like, we've been on our ass, but never on our knees. And that was so real, okay? I'm talking to the Black people right now. If you ever doubt yourself, never doubt where you come from. You have resilience, pride, and that's something else that he kept saying. We got that Black nigga pride. so you have that in your bloodline, and that is something for you that I hope you never forget. It's in you. Never forget where you come from. You may not know exactly where you're coming from, but just know it's in you. There's nobody who can stop you. You are resilient. You are powerful. You are exuberant and a beautiful being. And I'm not saying other races aren't like that, but I'm just saying, as a Black person, have that pride in yourself and know that you are never alone in that. It's always in you. So as I said from the beginning, there are so many things to talk about when it comes to this book, right? There are just not a lot of men who can do what Dan Freeman did and accomplished in over 12, 13, 14 years that he was working on this master plan to free Black people and have a revolution to get free. And again, the mental fortitude and the psychological pressures and the wanting and the desire to want to rest and take a break and even just, relax into his position, because he made it up there. He was making money. He was a token, he going to parties. He could easily just be like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to enjoy the fruits of my labor, of all the work that I've done, so there's just not a lot of people who can do that. I just recognize that as a leader, of someone trying to make a great change for the betterment of people, it is not easy to be that person. And I really felt it when he said, I'll do any damn thing to be free. Him playing, his own psychological warfare within his head, that was difficult. But I appreciate Dan for staying rooted into the cause because someone has to do it. And yeah, I don't know. This is like again, we're standing Dan. That's just really it. He was the man. We stand Dan the man. Okay. It is a great feat and very cool to try to unite gangs from across the country of just people who are fed up of being pushed down. You know, that is not easy. And I don't want to say that I'm jaded about if something like that could happen now. I'm not saying, I know FBI agent, don't try to come for me. I'm not starting any kind of gang revolution, so don't worry. But I'm just saying, I don't know if anything like that could happen because, again, there are so many distractions and so many things thrown at, not just Black people in general. Social media, propaganda. There's a whole thing about propaganda I want to talk about, but that's just too much. Yeah, so social media, propaganda, people getting taken out, people getting murdered, all these things, you know. So it is just very, just honorable to do that, but also very stressful, high level of stress, always looking over your back, really not having any friends, no trust, you know. That's not a way that people want to live. But you got some people there's sacrifices that have to be made to be free. So again, this was a part of my controversial or cool series. And if I were to say, I would definitely say that this book was hella cool. Now, it was controversial in its acts. But for me, I'm going to rate this a cool because ain't nothing controversial about getting free. Well, there is actually everything controversial about getting free. But at the baseline, it's very cool. So, yeah. And I also want to say that this book and this movie that came out in 1973 were blacklisted. And so was Sam Greenlee. And I think most of the actors who were in that movie, who were involved with it, were also blacklisted. So just think about that, right? This book that was, again, written as a satire was blacklisted and banned, you know, and couldn't be seen. It was too controversial. So if you think about think about the banned book list right now. You know what I mean? There's so many things to be gleaned from that. And, you know, I want to, before I get into that, I also want to throw in, because people always talk really bad about fiction books, you know, oh, I can never only read books that are real. Like, this is real. This is some real stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this ain't for fun. This is not a fun book. This is a very frustrating and serious book. But all I'm getting at is you can learn a lot from fiction books. And that's all I'm saying at that. But this book was banned once white people really realized what it was about. They banned it. So it makes you think, you know, why are they banning things? There must be some truth to it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only too recently that this book was free to the public again. And the movie, which is on YouTube, that you should check out, and I will check it out. America has a history of trying to rewrite history and whitewash it, cover it up. So, like, just think about that when it comes to anything, anything in America. You know what I mean? Because there must be something to it if they don't want you to read it and watch it and view it. So again, I will be purchasing that book from my own personal library. Yeah, it's important. And it's unfortunate that Sam's life and his livelihood were, I won't say cut short. It was definitely a much bigger struggle to move forward in his creative pursuits and things like that. So yeah, that's difficult. But we're glad that it's open now. And I do want to point out that Mr. Greenlee, the author of this book, did actually have a chance to meet Aubrey Lewis, who was actually the first Black FBI agent he was the first Black FBI agent in 1962. He did meet him, and Aubrey Lewis told him that in his school, in the FBI Academy, the spook who sat by the door was required reading. So if they banning this book from other people and they making y'all read it in the FBI Academy, there has to be some truth to it. Like, maybe not the whole scenario might not have happened, but, or maybe it did, you know, again, COINTELPRO, look into that. There's something to be learned from this, is what I'm saying. And yeah, so again, this book was hella cool. Definitely controversial in its acts, but for me, it's going to get a stamp of cool for me. So just think about that. But this was a very lengthy review, and that's okay because this book was so enlightening. And so I am rating it a 6 out of 5 golden bookmarks. There's really nothing else to explain. I just gave y'all a whole dissertation about it. So yeah, this book was important to me and I'm really grateful for it. I'm very grateful to Dan Freeman, and I'm extremely grateful to the mind of Sam Greenlee and his dedication and vision for freedom for Black people. It is unfortunate that he was blacklisted, but I'm super happy to have done some research and found out that he was honored in his life and in his death in his hometown of Chicago. And, shout out to Chicago. It is a rich city full of rich Black history. And I'm tired, but with that, that wraps up another episode of the Cozy Little Book Club. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this very long but very important episode. If you've made it to the end, please leave a little stack of book emoji or anything else you see fit. If you've read the book, please leave a comment down below because I would love to hear your thoughts on it, your dialogue, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, if you think it's wrong, if you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm right, which I usually am. No, I'm just kidding. Just leave a comment in the comment section. I can't wait to hear from you all. And be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you know each time that I drop a new book review. But thanks again for tuning in. I hope y'all have a lovely day full of very thought-provoking thoughts and questions. Again, you should always use that free will and ask questions. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. And remember, when you open a book, you open your mind. Until next time, peace.